Victoria Pearson, but you can call me V, and I am off to Manchester today. So it is ridiculously early in the morning on a Sunday. I'm going to drive up to Manchester because my friend has got a comedy gig in the afternoon, but I've never been to Manchester before, so I'm super excited about it. I'm only going for 24 hours, but I do have 3 pairs of shoes with me because the shoes that go with this gorgeous new dress, let me show you. So I have got this gorgeous dress from the black wardrobe, which I am wearing with these chunky boots, but I can't drive in them, so I'm going to wear trainers to go there, and then I've got different boots for my outfit tomorrow. 3 pairs of shoes, and I'm only going for 24 hours. Quick pit stop at Stafford Services. The roads have been really clear so far, but it has got cloudier and cloudier the further north I've got. There is always time for a second breakfast, and I feel a lot more fueled up after that. So far, touch wood, we've had pretty good roads so far, not very much traffic. Almost died once, but only once, and are you really on the British motorway if you don't almost die once? I had a coffee and a cheese toastie, and I'm going to head out again. I like this Services. It's weird to say that you like Services. I know this is Stafford Services. There's a lot of room for kids to run around outside if they're getting a bit cooped up. There's a little arcade there. There's a Pret and a Costa and allegedly a Greggs as well, but I didn't see it. And there's lots of space for the kids to sort of move around and stretch your back out a little bit. They've even got little signs telling you to be careful of the ducks. Isn't that cute? When I arrived, I had just about enough time to dump my bags at the hotel. At least the neighbours should be quiet. We had to hurry to get to the metro on time for Nell's gig, so we took a shortcut through the cemetery. Absolutely beautiful, but we will come back here tomorrow as well. I have never actually got on a tram before. I was too busy looking at all the scenery around here, and my friend was getting stressed at me because they were worried they were going to be late. But we hopped on the metro. I loved the tap-in, tap-out system, so you don't have to worry about getting a ticket, although I did get anxious about how much it was costing. It worked out to be about £4.30 for a 20-minute ride, which wasn't too bad. The very first thing that I saw when I got into Manchester was this protest full of Israeli and the old Iran flag, which was a weird thing to see in a left-wing city as your first impression. I did feel for the one guy that was wrapped in a Palestine flag, though. I thought he was very brave, though it was the tiniest demonstration I've ever seen. When we arrived there, we had about 10 minutes to spare, but then my friend suddenly remembered that they needed a pride flag for their act, and so they had to scurry down to the market and find it. I was super impressed that only took them about 4 minutes, and look how colourful Manchester is. It's beautiful. The club itself, the Frog and Bucket, is really cool. It's had some massive acts here, including Sarah Millican and John Bishop, and Peter Kay actually got his debut here. And now also it's going to feature my friend Nell, who is up there somewhere. I'm not quite sure where. It was a great night. I did have to cut down quite a lot of Nell's act because it was completely filthy, but it will be in full on their channel, so I will link it when it is. Considering this was 2:30 on a Sunday afternoon and the acts were entirely new comics, just 12 people that had never ever done comedy before, I was shocked at how many people were actually there. This cute little frog stamp.
Oh, the barefoot backpacker! Thick. Fuck it, older. Hey, so, you may wonder, what on earth has just walked on stage right now? The answer is, I mean, Dave doesn't know either. So, I have a friend, my friend Susan, who is in the audience somewhere. And Susan once described me to her friends as, I don't know what Nell is, but they're obviously gay. Sadly, I am about as interesting as Susan's name. I am asexual, which, not to be confused with asexual, which is almost the opposite, makes finding it on Google search very difficult. Now, asexuality is where we have no attraction to anyone, not even you. Asexuality is part of the queer community, and obviously we have a flag. And you might be surprised, you might expect that, when we're not distracted by the pleasures of the flesh, that we would have time to create an absolutely fantastic, sparkly, dragon-filled flag. Sadly, this Pride is supposed to be about joy. There is no joy in this flag. There is no colour in this flag. You take away the purple and it looks like a sort of a broken 1970s black and white television. It's the sort of flag that it looks like you've sort of at school where you're late to do your homework and it's 15 minutes before the start of the lesson. And you run into the art room going, I need to create a flag, but there's only 2 felt tip pens. A purple one and a black one. And the black one is running out. But I do hang around on hookup sites, specifically gay male hookup sites. And you might be wondering, well, Nell, you're asexual. Why are you on a gay male hookup site? Thing is, I've got to eat sometime, and it's cheaper than Deliveroo.
We then went to the pub. Well, several pubs. So it is now the next morning. We will catch up with my friend Nell in a minute and talk about this show. The other acts were all amazing as well. I've only been practicing for 8 weeks and all 12 of them, this is pretty much their first time on stage. And I was really, really proud of all of them. They did so well. They were very, very brave. Nobody stuttered, stumbled or fell off the stage. And all in all, it was pretty brilliant. I'm waking up this morning next to Southern Cemetery, you can see there. Apparently there's loads and loads of famous graves in there. It seems like a very posh person's cemetery to me. Like we walked through yesterday, it looks very fancy. It's for the fancy ghosts. So I'll probably wander around there in a little while with my little camera clip on so I can show you, because I forgot to clip it on yesterday, which was very annoying because we saw some really great parts of Manchester and I thought it was a really, really pretty city. So hopefully I'll get the chance to pop back there this morning, but I already know that I want to come back to Manchester again. Last night I went to the Frog and Bucket Comedy Club to watch my friend Nell. Wave at me, Nell. What was the best part of it for you?
It's not something I've done before. I've been on stage, I've done spoken word stuff, but it's different because I've been on stage with something in my hand, like notes or something, and I just refer to the notes and then speak about the topic that it refers to. This is quite different for 2 reasons. One, because I don't have the notes in front of me. And the other one is because when I'm doing the spoken word stuff, like reading my teenage diaries to a largely queer audience, that is on my YouTube somewhere.
I'll link it in the description.
Yeah. The aim isn't to make people laugh. The aim is to make people engaged. The aim is to make people interesting. Sometimes what I say makes them laugh. Sometimes what I say makes them go, oh. Whereas this is, you're on stage for 5 minutes and your whole point of doing it is you are going to try and make the audience laugh as much as possible. That's a very different, something I'm not used to, that's a very different aspect to it.
5 minutes feels like a really, really long time to me. Did it feel like a long time when you were on stage?
I have ADHD and time blindness.
So did it go in a bit of a flash, or did you feel like you were up there for ages?
When we're doing the comedy course in those 8 weeks and we're going on stage and we're doing our routines in front of the other 11 people and the tutor, I don't know, it's almost like doing a driving test. Whereas when you're on stage in front of an actual audience who's never met you before, doesn't know anything about you, doesn't know anything about your routine, you just go on stage and you just do your routine and then you leave. You don't think about the timing, you don't think about how people are reacting in that sense. You're just sort of going with it, you're going with the flow. Now, there is a time limit of 5 minutes, but it doesn't matter if you go over it. But after 4 minutes, certainly at that comedy club, after 4 minutes, there's a red light that comes on stage, sort of below the balcony, so you can see that, red light's on, that means I've got a minute left.
So tell me about the actual course then. What does it involve? If I was thinking about signing up for it, what would it be like?
Right, so it's an 8-week course at a comedy club, a genuine comedy club. The tutor we had has been on the local comedy circuit for like 30 odd years. That particular club is one of the more notable ones in Manchester, and a few famous comedians that you may have heard of have either started there or have certainly been there in their early days.
I mentioned a couple of them earlier in the video.
The first couple of lessons were basically just us, basically the tutor going, how do you feel on stage? Just go up on stage and say something. And then we had a session on mind mapping. So we basically wrote down a word that we could think of and thought of all of the things that come off that word.
Oh, I bet your mind map was huge with your ADHD.
I did do several of them. But
bananas, no.
The idea behind the mind maps is to get ideas. So the idea behind a mind map is that you can go connecting all of the sort of themes that you've got and all the ideas that you've got. So you can create a kind of routine that follows a couple of the paths.
suppose that helps if you get a bit derailed by something like someone in your audience or something like that.
Well, going on to the later lessons, a lot of what we did in that course was very much stage presence. How do you, one of the lessons was how do you deal with hecklers, for instance, and also things like movement on stage, making sure that you're aware of the microphone stand is. You can use the microphone stand and the stool to effect in your routine if you want it, or you can just move it out of the way. And some of it was, we are performing on stage, and then the rest of the group are going, okay, you moved a bit too far that way, you're doing too much, it's distracting, or you're just standing there, it's not very interesting, and things like that.
Yeah, I really, really liked that you all sort of referenced each other. Not all of you, but a lot of you referenced each other. But your acts were all so different to each other. It was a real good variety of performance. I would say if you're into comedy, it's well worth going along to watch a show like that. I mean, you might not get the most polished performance, but what you'll get is raw and authentic and fun and new. And I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for inviting me.
It's a pleasure.
Right. Now, we were so excited about the show yesterday that we didn't actually really eat very much. Now I'm starving, so let's go into Manchester and find some food. Kit Kat for breakfast. Tempting. We stayed in the West Didsbury Premier Inn, which is about 20 minutes away from the centre, and directly opposite the Southern Cemetery, which is absolutely beautiful. It has got this gorgeous Gothic sort of style, really, really detailed stonework. It looks really well cared for and really well loved, and it is a beautiful place to just have a wander through. It's got these 4 chapels in it. We only actually saw 2 of them, I think. And again, it's got the bee motif that covers Manchester everywhere, and I'll talk more about that later. It is absolutely massive, and there are different sections for different faiths, and it is really beautifully peaceful here. It's also very, very well signposted. Now, I was trying to get my friend's attention here so I could get a little picture of them, but they have ADHD, so they got literally distracted by an actual squirrel. It was a wooden squirrel in this particular case, but around this graveyard there were loads and loads of squirrels running around, which I thought was very, very cute. We also saw a lot of magpies when we were here, and crows and pigeons and things like that. This seems like a rich person graveyard to me. It has got a lot of very notable graves in it. There is a whole list of the graves on Wikipedia, but included on that list are some Moors Murders victims, which I felt funny about, because I feel like pretty much everybody that knew those people would rather that they weren't on a list of notable people for that particular reason. I don't know, I just felt icky about it. So we didn't look for their graves for that particular reason, but there were a lot of notable graves there, including this huge one here. There are some really massive, massive monuments in this place. Do you know the reason you should not stand there in the summer now?
Well,
Yeah. Do you know what kind of tree that is?
I have no clue what kind of tree that is.
That is a yew tree, right?
Yew.
And
the poisonous one?
Yes. The Celts believed they had underworld associations, and that is because if you sit under one of these on a very hot day, the sap starts to evaporate, and it has got highly hallucinogenic properties, and so you would see God, and that is why they're often in graveyards, because there's supposed to be a connection to the underworld. The more you know.
The more you know.
Here I am, minding my business, wandering around the graveyard, and then suddenly I realise I am completely surrounded by weeping angels. Somebody called the doctor. There were some really cool and elaborate graves here. They were very sort of detailed, they were very sculpted, they were very, very tall, a lot of them. And even though we're right in the middle of the city, we are surrounded on 2 sides by very, very busy main roads and a metro line on the other side. It is still very, very quiet and very, very peaceful here. Some of them are so shiny that you do accidentally selfie in them whilst you're taking a picture, but this is the grave of Anthony H. Wilson, broadcaster and apparently cultural catalyst, so good for him. This is Andy Rourke's grave as well, who was very well known on the Manchester music scene. I would imagine that during the spring and summer those beds are full of flowers as well, and I bet this area is an absolutely stunning place to sit and have a picnic if you don't feel too spooked out by sharing your lunch with the ghosts. It even has a small memorial garden for road traffic accident victims. Now we'll come back to that in a little while. What is lovely about this graveyard, and you can see some of it behind me, is obviously it's absolutely beautiful. The chapels have got the most gorgeous architecture and all of the graves are gorgeous. But there's so much life here in a place of death. Like all around us, I've seen so many magpies and ravens and squirrels absolutely everywhere. And although you can still hear the road here, it's almost overlaid with the sounds of nature so that you could always forget that the other cars are there and imagine that you're just somewhere really, really peaceful. So this is Lowry's grave, and as you can see, people often leave little offerings. Is offerings the right word for him? The right word. Yeah, and those are ever such fresh flowers. They must have been put here today or yesterday. You can see little art supplies there as well, paintbrushes and pens. I think that's really beautiful. I told you that spring was coming. Look at that. Now, shortly after this, we reached the sort of Irish Catholic section of the graveyard, and I realised there were a lot of people there that were there to visit graves rather than wander around. So I stopped recording, but I kind of wish I had been recording because we had the loveliest encounter after this, and we didn't really discuss it until just after we had left the cemetery, and I'd forgotten to put my camera back on. So Nell just asked me, do I look trans? Right, let me get a bit closer, right? This is because somebody pulled up next to us and said, morning ladies, hope you have a nice day, right? And so Nell said, do I look trans?
I'm not objecting.
Now, they do...
For the record, I am not objecting to it.
They do, as you might be able to see there, they do have the they them badge, yeah? But you have to be quite close to them to read that, right? But painted nails, bright colours, very bright hair, very bright purple hair. And then let's get a closer look at some of these badges while we're here, right?
I'm a walking queer flag.
Yeah, I don't know why they might have read you as trans, but like I say, maybe this person, they were a bit older, maybe they don't know about non-binary, but you can't dress like that and then say, do I look trans, sweetheart?
I'm wearing my skirt.
We both actually thought it was so lovely that this person had seen somebody that they read as being trans, and they thought, I'm going to go out of my way to affirm this person and make them feel safe, even if it makes me look a bit weird. I thought that was ever so nice. Anyway, we hopped back on the metro, which is kind of like the train at this point, and this bit kind of reminds me of Milton Keynes. But that is the thing that I found odd about the tram, is that it feels like you're on a train at first, but then as you get into the city, it feels like you're on a bus that has started driving down a pedestrianised area for some reason. As we came into Manchester, my first impression was the beautiful canal and then these big, brutalist, very square-looking buildings, and I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. The canal system is still used, I think, for industrial purposes, and this is one of the busiest canals that had been used for industrial purposes. And that is one of the things that I really like about Manchester, actually, is just how visible their industrial history is. A lot of cities try and hide away the sort of workers, the things that make the city work. But Manchester wears its workers on its sleeve and is proud of them. And I really, really love that. We've got these gorgeous new buildings that are very bright, very glass, very modern, right next to these old red brick buildings. And I love the contrast of that. I think it's so beautiful. And I know that you get it in a lot of cities, but this particular area of Manchester seems to do it really, really well. And I think that is because of the way that the Northern Quarter was regenerated. For example, you've got the old viaduct here, and it's big and it's rusty and it's industrial, but it has also been made into a walkway now with grass on it. And at the very, very end of it, there is a beautiful little garden. Now, we didn't get a chance to go and sit in the garden on this particular day. I would have liked to, but I reckon it probably is very, very windy up there. So if you've ever been, please do let me know what it is like to sit in there. And you can see it if you peep through just about now. You can see the little seating and the plants in there. And it is all very, very pretty. I really, really like how they have used the old industrial structures and just repurposed them rather than sort of knocking them all down and starting over again. I also really like the level access on the tram. It gives Manchester a couple of accessibility points because there's absolutely no step between the tram and the platform. There's no gap. It would make it very easy to roll on and off in a wheelchair, or if you're using a cane to see where you're going if you are blind. They lose some accessibility points because none of their crossings seem to make any noise, however. When I said to my friend that I really loved this contrast between the old and the new and the canals being incorporated in, they said, "Oh my gosh, you have to come and see this." So we wandered through colourful streets and past fascinating artwork until we got to this little square. And within the square, there was, again, lots and lots of colourful. We've got Pizza Express there, but it's not that one. We're not in Woking. And we've got these lovely colourful benches around the square, very, very modern buildings. And then, boom, Frederick Engels statue. Interestingly, this statue, which has his name in Cyrillic at the bottom, was bought from Ukraine when they were selling off all of their Soviet relics. And it was bought for and donated to Manchester by Phil Collins. Yeah, that one. I don't know either. Manchester has got a lot of street art. It's got a lot of statues and busts of various notable people. This here is Michael Kennedy, who was a prominent music critic. And of course, music is a massive part of Manchester's history. But so too are the suffragettes. This is Amelia Pankhurst's statue. This was sculpted by Hazel Reeves, who also designed the sort of meeting circle around it. The statue itself is actually called Rise Up Women, but it's known locally as Our Emmeline, which I think is really, really nice. It's right next to where you get off the tram to get into this sort of trendy hipsterish part of Manchester that is the Northern Quarter, and it is a really, really nice area. You can see that the regeneration has been going on for a while. I absolutely loved this water feature, which is like a horizontal waterfall. It's got gentle flowing across, and it just feels really tranquil here in the middle of the city. You can see all the trams behind you there. Trams freak me out a little bit because people just wander in front of them, but apparently that's okay. We also found this cool piece of art. Now, it is called, and I hope I'm saying this right, Ishinki Touchstone by Kanya Zerdi. It looks completely weightless, but it weighs 18 tonnes of Carrara marble. And apparently touching it brings good luck, at least according to Bridgewater Hall's website, where this sculpture lives. It doesn't feel as smooth as you would expect it to. It's quite rough. Now, as I said, the Northern Quarter has this beautiful mix of really old buildings and really new, but one of the things that I really, really liked was the Tower of Light, which is well worth rabbit holing about if you are into engineering that uses artistic form as a structural part of the design. This beautifully intricate tower is not just decorative, it's a functional part of the power system that supports the Manchester heat network. And you can see that functional beauty throughout the city. I mean, look at these drains. They've got these gorgeous little oak leaves carved onto them. Who thinks to do that to a drain? But actually, I wonder if part of that craftsmanship comes from the fact that Manchester wears its working class on its sleeve. All of these bee motifs that you see everywhere are to represent the working classes who make the city happen. And they really are everywhere, from bins to bus stops. I also love these benches because they're very obviously not designed as anti-homeless architecture. And I really, really like that. There's further evidence by this piece of street art by George Wiley. Now, I had a look online and tried to find out if I was right about this, and I couldn't find anything to confirm it. But let me just say, when I heard that statue was called A New Broom and was supposed to represent both the end of the regeneration of that area and also to represent and honour the working classes of that area, I thought, well, I wonder if A New Broom is supposed to be a reference to the joke. But I can't find anything to confirm that. But there's a very old joke, and you can use it for different professions as well. But if you are the best street sweeper and you keep the streets as clean as possible and you're out there grafting every day, sweeping and sweeping and sweeping, they will reward you by buying you a new broom. I wondered if the title was a reference to that, like a little clever little play on words, like it's the new city, but also that. But I can't find anything to confirm it, and so I have absolutely no idea. What I really love about the regen of this is how the newer, more modern aspects and the artistic aspects link everything together. This metal roof here is called the Cloud. It is 27 tonnes of polished stainless steel. It's supported by 7.2 metres of high glass walls, and the little mosaics in here, each one of these flowers represents a victim of the Peterloo massacre. And that is another thing that I think that Manchester does really, really well. Like I said, you've got the very, very modern sitting next to the very old and the sort of not quite so old, because we've got the old phone boxes here, which unfortunately do not have phones in anymore. We've got these gorgeous stone cloisters, but we've also got these huge glass buildings and these artworks that link everything together in a way that makes it feel really cohesive. And like I say, Manchester, it wears its history proudly, and that includes things like remembrance memorials. I have never been to a UK city before where I have seen so much memorialised in just the surrounding streets. So we popped across to go to the war memorials, and I did get a bit scared at one point because we had to walk across the tram lines to do that, and that does freak me out a bit. And this is a huge amount of poppy wreaths, considering that we are currently in March. Our remembrance season tends to be November. But I also love that they have these separate plaques here that are for all sorts of different and almost forgotten conflicts. We've got a plaque for the Soviet soldiers who helped us in World War II. We've got our Italian comrades from 1915 to 1918. There is a thing for the Polish war dead as well. And so we've got all of these different sort of memorials that I have never seen in any other places before. And I think that that's really, really cool. It even has a little memorial plaque for the British Nuclear Test Veterans Association. Sadly, it seems that there has been plenty of space left for any future plaques that we might need. And it's a shame that they've had to plan for that. My time in Manchester was rapidly coming to an end, which was a shame. So I tried to get a selfie with my friend, but didn't actually realise that I was recording and not taking a photo. Never mind. I got back on the metro on my own, and I was a little bit anxious about it because I had only got on the metro for the very first time yesterday, and now I was on it on my own. And so I held my bank card in my hand so that I wouldn't forget to tap out, because that could get terribly expensive. And I followed the directions that I was given, and I was very, very proud of myself that I managed to find my way back, even though it was actually really, really easy to find my way back from there. I just had to get off at the right stop, keep that cemetery on my right, and I should, theoretically, find the Premier Inn again. I would absolutely love to visit Manchester again. My impressions of it was that it was a beautiful, clean, and really friendly city. And I loved all the history that was just evident in the streets. It was absolutely gorgeous. I would love to spend more than 24 hours there and see a little bit more than just the Northern Quarter. I made it back to the hotel without getting lost. We used the metro all by myself. I'm so proud of myself. Whew, I'm looking forward to going home now though. I'm very tired. I then stopped at services because I needed to grab something before I went home, but I had to go over the footbridge because I was parked on the wrong side of the motorway for the shop that I wanted, and these things freak me out. They do not look sturdy enough to be going above lorries like that, but we did survive. A bit scary, this bit. I had to go across to buy my husband some flowers, which I've now done. That is because on Valentine's Day, when I complained at him about not getting me flowers, he said, well, you've never got me flowers. And he was right. We can't be having that. So it's our wedding anniversary today, so I decided to stop to buy him some flowers. My husband was actually just quite perplexed with why I'd bought him flowers, in case you're interested. He at first thought I was joking and that my friend had bought them for me as a sort of thank you for coming to their show, I guess. But when I explained that no, I had stopped, and especially to get him flowers for our anniversary, he was confused. But he did like it, I suppose. So I had a great time in Manchester, really, really enjoyed it. And I thought it was just such a beautiful city. Now, I know that I was visiting a very specific part of Manchester. I was visiting the Northern Quarter, which has undergone massive regeneration since it was bombed by the IRA in 1996. And no small amount of gentrification, I would imagine. But like I said before, I really like how they haven't just swept aside their working class history and replaced it with shiny new. They've really incorporated the history into the regeneration, and I think that's beautiful. I'm sure there's probably quite a few areas of Manchester that are a little bit less aesthetic to visit, but I would love to come again and explore a little bit more. Join me on Monday for my next vlog. I have absolutely no idea what I'm vlogging about at the moment because I'm still so exhausted from Manchester. We might have to do a quiet, crafty video next week. Either way though, I will be here every single morning in your shorts, taking a great big deep breath, letting you know what I'm grateful for. Sometimes I am letting you know what is challenging me that day. And I'm also here on a Witchy Wednesday doing an intuitive tarot card pull for you as well. And as always, you can book me for a private reading on my Ko-fi, which is on my Linktree, which I'll put in the description. I will also link in the description to Nell's full set when it goes live, because it was really, really good, but it was just not quite PG-13 enough for my particular channel. I had a great time watching it though. So like and subscribe, or don't, I'm not your mum. And either way, you have yourself a magical week.